in what is like really one of the most obvious continuity breaks ever of all time. Pun not intended. Or intended, I guess.
Definitely intended.
I dislocated my finger, so it's not a break. It's Casual Compliance Nights.
Yeah, I think that's the name we're going with.
Yeah, that's what we're going with at this point. And like I've got an animation picture in my head that Chili can do because he edits the rest of it.
Hey, I'll try.
I believe in you. Look, we've always wanted to do something like this, and I mean, episode 0 exists already, where we did a more casual conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The show's Casual Compliance. We could have called it Casual Conversation. Anyway,
we did
Casual Compliance Nights.
Here we are.
Where we have, more of a conversation about the game as a whole. In episode 0, we spoke about the game for about 1% of the show and spoke about ourselves for the rest because that was our introduction.
Honestly, that episode exists to like seed a podcast feed. It's not really
it's
meant
SEO
for consumption.
Really more than anything else. But we wanted to get a few episodes of the show in and then bring out, some breather stuff, give us a break as well, because it can be really tiring to look at the band list that comprehensively, and it all starts to meld together.
Yeah, I think we always had ideas about like, well, let's talk about maybe some of our own decks or like some of the games that we've had together, events we've gone to and played Commander, like
exactly
more of the like, your cult of personality, more of the game around the game, if you will.
A full episode about Syntax Daddy and how I finally learned how to Scryfall search after watching my own YouTube videos.
Believe me, that is in my list. We are getting to that.
It's so exciting. I just built a deck that I used the Scryfall search to improve and was so excited I sent him the search that I used.
Never been more proud.
But there's been a massive discourse happening the last 2 weeks that,
you've probably heard about it.
Probably have. And honestly, it's still going, and this is what's really interesting about this discourse, which we'll bring up in a second, is that most people having the discourse are having it on Twitter and not talking to anyone but the echo chamber.
Yeah.
So we figured the 3 listeners that we have and 1 viewer, because there are people that listen to our podcast on Spoofy.
A lot of people are watching those shorts. I don't know if you've noticed.
You're welcome, internet.
Yeah.
Look, we wanted to have the discussion together with you in a verbal way because it's a good way to kind of communicate this and have a look at it. Have a look at the discourse, which is around Rule 0 and is around Commander as a format, I guess, culturally. It's kind of a discussion about, it's the Duel of the Fates of Commander. Okay. Happy Star Wars Day when it was Star Wars Day.
You've missed that by a bit.
Every day Star Wars Day, baby.
Okay.
Don't make me lift my shirt again.
No.
Was that in an episode? Did we blow that out?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, good
that
stuff.
Was episode...
Is that episode 0?
It might have been.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
But like it's right now we're having strong discussions around the culture of Magic the Gathering and Commander as a format entirely, off the back of an update to the Commander culture. I have it in my hand, the philosophy of Commander, which is the culture of Commander. So off the back of that update, and then off the back of Wizards of the Coast coming out and talking about how they tried something with Unfinity and it didn't work and they ain't doing it again. Most likely.
Yeah.
And then other things came from that. But we'll get down to that in a bit. What I wanted to talk about first, I'm the one with the phone this time instead of Syntax Daddy because I'm the one who's chronically on the internet.
Hey, I dropped a bunch of those links in there.
You dropped most of them in there because I just went, haha, funny, look at this guy crying about Armageddon, and you were like, here's all the official stuff. And I was like, oh, you have good opinions about this. But
so I think just before you get into that, like the thing you mentioned about like most of this conversation being on Twitter, it's mostly people shouting around each other and not really engaging in a lot of conversation, which I think is like what we want this to be, is more of an actual exploration of some of the ideas and the points that people are trying to make.
There's a lot of tweet threads where people are responding to their own tweets.
Yes.
And if there's a response in there, then maybe it's like a singular response to that.
It gets lost.
But that's it.
There's not a lot of room for nuance on twitter.com.
And, a lot of this is stemming around a singular response from Mark Rosewater, which we'll also get to. That has stemmed so much discussion that we found has been happening since 2020 and probably even before that, really. So let's talk about the update. for
Yes.
the philosophy.
Yes, this is the official Commander philosophy document.
Yes, so this is on mtgcommander.net.
Yes.
This is from the April 2024 quarterly update.
So about a
so
month ago.
yeah,
as
April
of
16th.
time of recording.
Yes. And they actually highlighted as well. So the update is about the stability of Commander as a format, and I'll read it here. Commander is stable. Commander players become emotionally invested in their decks through play and personalization, and that bond is an important part of the experience. Players who build Commander decks should should be confident they will be able to play them over long periods of time. So format management decisions are intended to, when necessary, make changes, even large ones, but not for the purpose of defining a metagame, shaking things up, or in reaction to the hot topic of the day. And format management decisions are intended to minimize changes that require players to actively maintain their decks.
Yeah, so it's like you don't want to be issuing an update every quarter, so every 3 months. It makes people have to go through all of their decks and swap cards out.
Exactly. And I which begs the question, why do we have quarterly updates? Well, Wizards are bringing out a set a month at the moment, so you need them. Even though there hasn't been a ban since 2021.
Yeah.
Bless you,
They did
Golos.
actually, so like, I'm not sure if you're going to get to this, but with the stuff about Unfinity, one of the things that was interesting in the last like major ban and restricted update was the banning of stickers and attractions
Yeah.
at a mechanic level from like standard, from like
From
competitive.
from modern, I
Yeah,
believe
from
it
modern.
is. Yeah.
And that is
Or
something.
legacy. No, it's legacy because it was the goblin,
Yeah.
specifically the goblin.
Yeah, Blank Goblin?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mind Goblin. Yeah, and then like Jim LePage from the Rules Committee came out and said, just to be clear, because there's a lot of talk about it, we're not banning stickers and attractions.
Yeah.
Because like banning an entire mechanic in something like Commander with the way that that's kind of talking about stability and playing stuff in your decks for a long period of time, like that's something that would be pretty. That's a big swing.
Yeah,
It's a big swing
absolutely.
for them to do that.
Thinking about the stability of it, I mean, there are people that will have attraction to Stickers deck, and they are within their rights to have those. Some of the fun of Commander is like it's such a weirdly open but also restrictive format with like 50 banned cards
Well, yeah,
or so.
I think
Like,
the like creativity born from constraints comes from you've got 100 cards, 1 to 2 of them are your commanders, and then the rest of them operate on a singleton rule except for basic lands. So like within single, it's like you can find cards with different names that do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
If you want to double down on an effect.
Yeah.
Or you can mix some weird shit up and like get creative with it.
and I mean, despite the conceit of the show, which is me saying cards shouldn't be banned and you saying like, oh, maybe they should be, and us discussing it, the ban list exists for a reason. And we talk about that every time. It's what does it do to the culture of the game?
Yeah.
And so, but there are more than 26,000 individual cards at this point, and
Yeah.
a billion sets coming out in the future. So it's important that the culture of the culture of the game is considered. And I like this stability clause because I don't want to have to go back through my deck and be like, oh, did they unban Layla again, or did they reban?
Yeah, it becomes like an active maintenance you need to do of constantly paying attention to these updates. Like, I get it for competitive formats, that stuff matters because sets rotate in and out, and stuff is changing because of oversaturation at competitive events.
Yeah.
This is not that.
There isn't really a metagame in Commander because if EDHREC can have a top 1,000 Commander list where all of them have quite a lot of decks built and played, even just on a website, that is more variety than an RCQ that sees 32 decks and a quarter of them are
The same thing.
This relic, coalition relic now is whatever it is
Yeah.
that is the meta, or Snowtron and the rest.
Yeah.
Like I went to a modern event and played, like I was the only one that played mono green, because I played against all meta decks. It was
Yeah.
really dumb.
It was funny.
Really funny because these
Yeah.
guys were playing Commander off the side, like, haha, funny time. And it was me playing
Paradox Engine in green.
mono green control, where I was turning people's lands into I was liquid metal coating people's lands, turning them to artifacts, and then splintering their lands,
It's so
removing
funny.
all of the lands from their deck. I won 2 games out of like the 30 that I played. So
Yeah, but you got a moral victory by making someone 2 games over shout out, "What the fuck?"
yes, it was great. I had so much fun that weekend because I played the goofball thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? The people I played against, maybe they had a good time, maybe they didn't have a good time playing against me. So I know some did because at the end of the game we were laughing about the thing. But that was at a serious event, and maybe I didn't respect that enough. But in the same time, this is where the conversation around Commander comes, is respect the culture, the conversations. So we know about the stability clause, we're gonna in the links and everywhere else, and maybe Chili will scroll on the screen.
I will try to remember to do this when we edit it.
Yeah.
Because it has to go out. Because we're doing this like fairly tight time-wise. It has to go out in 5 days.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be a big edit though, because we're pretty masterful. All of that stuff right at the start as well. That's saying into.
We'll see.
So let's talk about the Mark Rosewater tweet, shall we?
Yes.
I'm just going to get this, make sure I get it right. Now
So that was like largely in response to the update about like the retrospective on Unfinity.
Yes. So there's a retrospective of Unfinity, and I'm not going to read into that because whilst it's important, it's about eternal formats, and Commander is an eternal format. Wizards of the Coast aren't specifically talking about Commander in this format. And, even actually, Commander's gone against Wizard in this decision where Wizards have said, this is banned, and Commander said, nah.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
We'll have that actually. We'll have all your stickers and attractions.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
It's where they belong, really. It is where they belong, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So Mark is responding to a conversation between Brian Kibler, Glenn Jones, and Saffron Olive, all pretty big people in the Magic community on Twitter and YouTube and the rest.
Yeah.
And the response is from the 14th of May at 5 a.m. Australian time.
Yeah.
5:51 a.m. Australian time, and it's in response. The number one complaint I got from players about uncards was their group wouldn't let them play them. For many play groups, Rule 0 isn't a practical thing.
Right.
And there's been a lot of really interesting responses to that tweet, and then it commenced a larger discourse around Rule 0 that I feel like has been bubbling. It's an interesting thing for someone with such a position of power, but such a weird parasocial relationship because of his almost weekly conversation for over 1,000 weeks with the players. He's one of the most open and vocal men about Magic, like it or not. He loves the game almost more than anyone that plays it, in my opinion. Like, listening to his podcast, and I've listened to all 1,000 episodes of his podcast.
I thought you stopped.
No, I genuinely have. Like, I restarted, and I feel like it makes me a better Magic player.
Yeah,
That's why I hit Mythic finally on Arena.
Hey.
But, he really cares.
Yeah.
And he's such an intelligent man. And just brown-nosing, but I think it is unfortunate of him specifically to mention Rule 0 when it comes to talking about uncards. And just, I guess, to talk to the response that resonated with me the most, to specifically Mark, if the number one complaint was that players groups wouldn't let them play with uncards, wouldn't the most logical conclusion be most players don't want to play with uncards, not Rule 0 isn't a practical thing?
Yeah.
And that's from at Titty Pills. That's Jess Wiley, another content creator regularly on Tolarian community.
Yes.
I think a writer for Tolarian as well. So I think that really resonated with me because I get it. I don't think it's about Rule 0. I think it's about on cards. If most people don't want to play with them.
Yeah, because Mark's tweet sounds like the conflict there is between people who want to play stickers and attractions or uncards or whatever, and the playgroup saying in Rule 0, I don't want to play with that,
Yeah.
and saying, oh, rule zero is the problem, as opposed to like, well, maybe these cards shouldn't have been made eternal legal.
Yeah. And I guess, going through some of the responses.
Which, like, to be clear, in the Unfinity retrospective, that's what they call out as being a mistake, is letting some amount of Unfinity cards exist outside of an unset, something they've never done before, and they basically say, we're not going to do that again.
Whoops.
There are some cards that I think work decently well in Commander, like, Magar of the Magic Strings is a very interesting commander to play against.
Which we will talk about a little bit, I think, because I think it's important.
You can do some funky stuff there. There's one, was it Starlight Spectacular? There's a white enchantment or something, but it's like it's like one of those ones where like a creature gets 1 counter, and then the next one gets 2, the next one gets 3, and it scales up linearly. There's some weird stuff like that.
He's become me. Look at that memory.
Yeah. It's because I've thought about putting it in a deck before.
But I mean, Paradise Lost. Yeah. I play in.
How many decks?
2 now, because I was going to put it in a third one, but I didn't. But Paradise Lost is just like the most efficient recursion of all time.
Yeah.
Of any card type.
Yeah, but like those cards in the context of Unfinity are the closest, like rules wise, to the rest of Magic.
Yes.
It's not like open an attraction that lets you open a booster pack or whatever the fuck is going on in Unfinity.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, these cards are like just walking up to the edge of legality.
Like Embiggen is a card that is a card that's fully legal. I played that in Borborygmos, I think it is. No, I played it in Thrun Sleeved before I dismantled Thrun Sleeve. But Embiggen is like gets +1/+1 for each subtype, super type.
Oh yeah.
Each subtype and each super type. So if it's a legendary creature, that's 2 subtypes.
It's funny that like that one is in an unset where they print Riku of Many Paths, which refers to modal spells in its text.
Yeah.
A thing that has never been referred to on a Magic card in history.
Exactly.
It's just like a design term.
Yeah.
And like a way that we talk about cards that have a choice that you make in terms of what happens when it resolves. Yeah. And they're like, oh no, this is a word that exists as a mechanic now. I'm not sure.
It's in Oracle text, baby.
Yeah. And like I've looked at what that Commander deck might look like. It's a fun thing you do on Scryfall is like if you open up a legendary creature, sometimes, and this happens with Riku, it'll give you a suggested search for things that work with it synergistically. And you just click on that and it'll bring them up.
Nice.
It's so great just to scroll through that and go, oh yeah, there are some really dumb modal spells. Yeah.
It's EDH but better.
Kind of. It wasn't the best search, but anyway, that's getting off the point.
But I guess to talk about some of the responses, and I think it's really important to say that we capture these responses, first of all, because they're the popular people, but not from a hey, look at this dickhead, or, oh yeah, I fully agree with this, but it's important to understand the discussion is very nuanced, and everyone's opinion does matter, because these are fundamentally players of the game and people that are passionate enough about the game to talk about it. Starting with Shivan, I'm not even going to try...
Shivam loves Magic, casual Magic.
Shivam, keeper of the favorites. Right? Gira Puri Gears on X, I think is how you say that. But
something like that.
It's on the screen.
If you play Magic and don't know Shivam, you're missing out.
Yeah. I swear to God, some of you people are acting like Rule Zero is some weird woke ideology forcing you to play with bumper guards while bowling and give everyone a participation trophy. Pretty strong feelings about it, but with some of the discussions I've seen personally online, I get it.
Yeah.
There are people that are complaining that, oh, why do I have to talk to my friends about the game I'm playing?
Or these strangers who I don't have social trust established with.
Yes. We've never met before, so I'm going to play my Oloro deck that has like 5 infinite life gain, life loss combos that I can get around turn 10. Yeah. I'm just going to hope you don't cotton onto that.
Yeah.
And then... I love this one so much. Rachel Agnes.
What date was that posted?
The Shivan one?
No, the Rachel one.
Well, the Shivan one was posted on the same 15th of the 5th.
Around the same time.
Yeah. At, about 2 hours after Mark Rosewater's tweet, which was 7:50 a.m. Australian time.
Right. Yeah, that's breakfast. Have a coffee, read some Shivan.
That's literally how it happened. I was reading this because this was just after I injured myself as well, so I had a lot of time.
Yeah, true.
Rachel Agnes at Baytog underscore on X says, MTG guys have zero excuse for not having communication skills because I've seen you all announce every single game action, phase, and trigger like your life depended on it.
I fucking love that so much.
I'm looking at you, person watching this for the first time ever, if you can explain state-based play and know not to bolt a 2/3 Tarmogoyf, you can have a conversation with your friends about your deck. But that was tweeted the 5th of July 2020.
Yeah. Fully 4 years
ago. 4
ago.
years ago. Over 4 years ago at this
Yeah.
point. So like it's just been a conversation for a while, but it is, it remains an important conversation.
Yes.
To talk on, I guess, on someone who has differing opinion. Saffron Olive at Saffron Olive on X has said, I'm very much in the camp that Commander has outgrown Rule Zero. It's great for individual playgroups, but Commander isn't just about playgroups anymore. Now I think it's mostly used by people in power to avoid having to make potentially unpopular decisions and manage the format. Which is an interesting
this
take.
one I wanted to try and unpack a bit because there's almost 2 or 3 different statements in there. Like, Commander is, in my mind, about individual playgroups. If we're talking about Commander as a casual format, putting CEDH to the side.
Yes, and I want to just be very clear.
We will talk about CEDH.
But in this concept, and I guess in the conceit of the show and the concept of our show entirely and all of our discussions, CEDH sits in a separate box because it is not a casual format. That's what the C stands for.
The goals are different, the incentives are different, the communication is different.
Yes.
There's stuff like specifically on this topic that I do want to touch on with regards to CEDH, but to go back to this, talking about like it's bigger than individual playgroups, like it's kind of not. Like when you're playing the game, you're sitting down just with 4 people.
Yeah.
That is your contained experience.
Those 4 people over there on that table next to us are none of my business. Like I'm not threat assessing over there.
No.
Because I've got a game here going on.
I'm also not walking over to that group and saying, did you guys do a Rule Zero conversation? Like, how did that go? Do you feel that that was fair? Like, I'm not involving myself in other people's playgroups. I'm working out for myself and the people I'm playing with, is this good? Is this fun? And then we're just going to get on with it.
Yeah.
And then the bit about like people in positions of power, can you read that again?
Yeah, now I think it's mostly used by people in power to avoid having to make potentially unpopular decisions and manage the format.
So that I feel like is either referring to Wizards of the Coast or the Commander Rule Committee or Advisory Group, basically not wanting to step in and say like, this is what you should do, instead saying, figure it out for yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, they already make difficult decisions in managing the format or the game.
I think any time that they go against the grain, and, like I said at the start, not reacting to the topic of the day. I'm going to put this away because I think that's most of the tweets that I wanted to talk about. If any decision they make that goes against the grain or that goes against what the hot topic of the day is, like, banning Voja or all that kind of stuff, is going to be a tough decision for the rules committee because it might look good to be like, hey, we also think Voja's bad, so we're going to ban it and appease the vocal minority, or hey, even like the majority. But
quick side question: have you played a single game against or with Voja yet?
Yes.
Okay, I've yet to. Like, as much as people are like, this is going to be everywhere and like it's going to be such a problem, it's like I've got one in my collection.
It actually, in my opinion, brings up another discussion around this stuff. But we'll get there when we get there. But it's just like this concept of they're pushing the hard conversation on the players. They kind of are. I don't disagree that they're pushing the hard conversation on the players, but the conversation needs to be had by the players.
I think also the problem is not the conversation. The problem is that people think it's hard to have.
Yes, exactly. It's this, I shouldn't have to talk about this. Like, I want to play Sheoldred as a commander. Well, congratulations. It's unbanned.
You can.
You can.
You can do that.
But if I don't want to play against you playing Sheoldred as a commander, that's my prerogative.
I don't have to.
Exactly. I'm not banning your Sheoldred. I don't want to play against it.
Yeah, I'm opting out.
Yeah. If I don't want to play against your Unfinity card, and we have that in our play group. Just before we get to the pie break tweaks, I'm going to Actually,
Yeah.
will grab my phone back to read the Firebreak tweaks. I think
good tweet.
it's a really good one.
Good one.
It's a great tweet thread as well. We have someone in our regular play group who plays an Unfinity commander. He plays Magar, like you said, and that deck.
It's always different. It's always interesting.
It's a different experience. It's always really, really silly.
Yeah.
Always really silly.
Because it's essentially put a secret spell face down as a 2/2 creature. 2/2?
Yep, 2/2.
Yeah. If it lands combat damage, you get to cast a copy of it for free.
Yeah, and it remains as a creature. It remains on the battlefield.
It remains face down as a creature, and you can just keep doing that.
He's the biggest Johnny deck builder ever. He finds a mechanic and he's like, how can I make this really dumb? And I used to go
the same guy who did Ratadrabic Wraiths.
Exactly. He's done Nazgul Ratadrabic,
so good.
Which is a meta modern staple. Yeah, so it's very funny. But like
it's a
in
high
Commander,
deck, but like the first time I saw it, I lost my mind.
Yeah, it was great. When I deck build now, I used to go to my Spike friend and be like, hey, look at my deck, make it impossibly competitive. Now I go to Alex and I say, hey man, what do you think goes in here?
Yeah, what have I missed?
Yeah, because he's got such a good brain for like.
Well, also like he and I have had at least one conversation in a pub about some old land cards that give a single color creatures banding.
Yeah.
It's like, why is that a land, first of all? But now that's the thing he knows and is probably going to put in a deck somewhere.
He is. He's putting it in a deck. I wanted him to put it in the Wraith deck.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like that's the thing is like he is what Piebreak talk about as the goofball friend who makes goofball decks.
They just also happen to be like kind of high powered sometimes.
Yeah, and a lot of time the goofball decks are high powered, and it takes a lot for them to go off. And if they do go off, awesome. But they're also very easy to manage.
Yes.
But this format is about being a safe space for people to express their creativity in their decks.
Yeah.
But also within reason. There are times where he sat down and he's like, I want to play Magar. And I'm like, I don't really want to play against that. And he said, oh, okay, cool, I'll play something else.
Yeah.
And there's other times where he's like, no, I really want to play this. And I've changed deck.
Yeah.
Like, or I've been like, look, I don't want to play against it this time. I think this was at a Command Fest where I was like, I don't want to play against it this time. And I went to another table.
Yeah. I mean, we also turned up there with like 10 people we knew. So we just like went a seat over and that was a new playgroup.
Yeah. But even then, like I left that playgroup. Like I wanted to play with my friend, but he wanted to play something that I didn't want to play against. And I wanted him to have a good time. Like, because more often than not, he says, I'll play something other than Magar. But then also there's times where I'm like, no, I want you to play Magar against this.
Yeah.
Like I built something really fun and I want you to play Magar against it because I know Magar's silly and I want to see how it interacts.
Yeah. Or it's like, I think they'll like not necessarily be like a hard counter, but they'll, in a game of 4, they will kind of work as part of that experience.
Yeah. So I guess, and that leads to, kind of how a generalization of some of our Rule Zero discussions. But to talk about Piebreak, at Piepod on X, on Twitter.
Not a podcast I've actually listened to. I just came across this tweet and I love it.
On Discord, you can find them probably. Who knows? Maybe we should bleep every time we mention their podcast so we don't send... No, fuck that. Look.
Traffic's traffic.
So it says here, Mark brings up an interesting point about Magic players, untrusted and trusted play, and Rule Zero here. I have a very you get what you give mentality with Commander. I think if you ignore Rule Zero, you leave a lot of fun on the table. That said, most players ignore it. 1/X. Then it goes on to say, EDH should be an uncard dream, but enfranchised Magic players hate a rule bend. Unfinity was Magic begging its players to let their friends play goofball cards in the goofball format. Casual cards, casual format. Uncards, silly cards in the casual, silly, fun time format where you're having fun.
It wasn't all of them. It was a dozen?
There was exactly.
Maybe?
It was like 30 cards in a 400 card set.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And you know what? Of all the cards that they should have taken out of them, Breeding Pool and all of those dual lands just to fucking piss everyone off.
Oh, but the lands are so nice.
Design saw that players needed their goofs to be explicitly legal, so that's what we got.
Yeah.
So design said, look, some of these cards that are ha-ha funny, they need to be legal. So we're taking a step over and making them legal.
Yeah.
And then they've recounted that because they've realised nah, we messed up here.
Yeah.
Which is huge for a company like this.
Yeah.
And the first time Wizards, who have had a lot of flops recently,
Yeah.
just side scroll
No,
like
I'm not gonna.
30th anniversary
Yeah.
and all of the
Put your face up instead. I think the funny thing about Infinity is like it was coming out at a time when I was still pretty fresh to Magic, and I was like, oh, unsets are really fun, and I like the historical ones that I looked into. I'm gonna get into that, and then they said the thing about these cards will be legal, and I before it came out, I was like, I wish they didn't do that, because I feel like it allows them to get weirder without trying to concede to making it legal and making it fit within the rules. And I feel like it was honestly like a commercial push to try and make more money off the set.
Yeah.
Was to make it legal in more than just its own draft format or whatever.
Yeah. And you know, when we look at like we have to look at corporations as they are. They're brands are brands, so they're gonna do what works financially for them. But again, listening to Mark's podcast and looking at the way design communicate with the community, the health of the game is so integral to them.
Yeah.
People are talking about like look at conspiracy. The whole format of like conspiracy specific cards are fully banned.
Yeah.
In Commander, and other formats. Anti cards as well.
Yep.
Like yes, I want to anti your Black Lotus.
Yeah.
That's it. Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, back to these tweets.
But yeah, like it's there are full cards banned, but they are really considered in why they're being banned. So you know, they're in untrusted play, which I guess play without a discussion first.
Well,
play where I don't know you, so I don't trust you.
I tried to look into like game design, like academic resources around like is trusted and untrusted play like a common term. It doesn't seem to be. So the way that I've kind of interpreted this is like untrusted play is competitive play, where you're not revealing anything about your deck's construction, its combos to your opponents because that is information that has value or power over them, and you intend to exploit that. Whereas trusted, I think, is what we approach Commander as, of like, I'm going to tell you what deck I'm going to play, what kind of combos it has, if any, what kind of speed it operates at, like any information I think is helpful to you to determine how to approach the game yourself.
I'm not going to tell you my entire deck, even though I could because there's 100 cards in it, so good luck getting in them out.
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
I'm going to tell you what it does. I'm going to tell you what speed it can do it, so you can keep an eye out for what you think might be the case.
Yeah.
Like when I play my Slivers deck, my Slivers deck actually isn't a Slivers deck. It's a Commander deck about Cascade.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so yeah, in untrusted play, banning uncards makes sense. There are too many game breakers, and they'd flood the ban list. It's easier just to ban all of them.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But that so many people wanted to use silver bordered cards in trusted play and weren't able to speaks to a wider issue with Rule 0. So what this saying is like it makes sense in an untrusted play version to ban all of the uncards. But the fact that so many people in a world with a ban list where silver bordered cards are banned wanted to be able to play them, you know, it does make Rule 0 more important but that also, you know, there is a bigger issue with Rule 0 here. Some players want to do weird stuff for laughs, mega. Others want a more balanced, competitive experience. EDH's long... Everyone's got to say hate that I pronounce a H with a H, but fuck you, get over it.
Hey, yeah.
I have a master's degree. Fuck all of you.
And you're from Australia. That's just how a lot of people here say H.
EDH's years long split between goofs and synergy is coming to a head, which is really important. When I got Magic Mike.
Ooh, come on, baby.
When I got Chili Bin into Magic, it was just at the cusp where Commander was becoming the number one format. Modern was losing its groundswell. Pioneer was losing its groundswell. They stopped printing Modern and Pioneer precons and were printing more and more Commander precons. And now we're at the point where Modern Horizons 3 is coming out with 4 precon decks that are Commander precon decks and not Modern precon decks. Commander's so getting E-Tron.
Yeah.
Literally, there is a land in the Commander deck that is E-Tron.
Oh, yeah. That one card, I want it. I want it
so badly.
I want it.
I would put your entire house on this. Anyway,
Over my house, dude.
but yeah, so some of this, and saying that some of this discourse is on content creators. Everybody talks about wanting to change how we discuss the game experience, but still most default to the old 1 to 10.
Yeah, the
You know,
power level idea.
yeah,
Yeah,
and there's always a little wink and a self-aware joke in there.
everything's a 7.
Exactly. People either need to start putting where their mouth is, or just calling everything a 7 again. That's just where we need to go. But most of this is on players. The buy break says a lot of this is on players. Commander is not Magic as it was originally designed. It's the one place where the weirdos can come out and play Mega. We all need to learn how to advocate for the experience we want.
Yeah.
Especially as the format becomes more streamlined.
That's also just good advice for life.
Exactly.
Advocate for what you want. Learn how to do that.
And look, I'm not going to go through the rest of this because there is still quite a few more things here.
That's kind of the main stuff out of it, though.
But I just want to find what really resonated with me. One of the most important things here. Oh no, that is what I wanted to think.
That was the mark,
that is the
yeah.
that is the mark, and I'm going to reiterate it because I really think it's really important. It's the one place where the weirdos can come out and play. We all need to learn to advocate for the experience we want, especially as the format becomes more streamlined. Because this game is starting to get... Oh, this is the other one. This comes back to stability as well. Sorry for the brain fog.
Hey, we're getting there.
This is about back to the stability clause, all the way back to the start where we talked about the game being stable and you being comfortable with a deck that you invested hours and hours and hours into building and not wanting to change.
Yeah.
Once you have a deck and a place to play, the biggest barrier to entry for this format is understanding the wide variety of experiences available to you and knowing how to advocate for the one you want.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the big thing. There are so many different ways to play Commander, including CEDH.
Well, even just within the bounds of EDH, Casual Commander, every game is going to be so wildly different. Even if it's the same 4 people, if you change decks, the shuffling happens differently. You will not ever see the same game twice.
Yeah. Splits make it different. Like, how many Commander decks you on now? You're on
19, 20?
I've got 15. Nigel has close to 30.
I've got 3 like work in progress deck lists.
I just have Yidris in progress now, but like Alex has an amount as well, and Alex really plays precons well.
Yeah.
Really plays precons well.
Well, he plays them more than once. Like that's probably the main.
That's he really. He doesn't tear them apart.
Yeah.
But he plays them really fucking well.
Yeah.
But like we all have so many different decks, so many different combinations. You could just have the one play group of the same 4 players with so many different combinations of what that game can look like.
Yeah. And I mean, you can do the thing that we've done sometimes of like put the decks down and then rotate them.
Yeah.
Or roll a D20 to work out like which deck out of the pack that you're going to play. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's this it's things like that in our game group where we've spiced it up to make it a little bit more fun because sometimes it does get stale as well. You have to acknowledge that. Like, there's never you don't know things are good unless there's bad involved.
Yeah, but I think like that idea of staleness is sometimes why someone might sit down and say, "Oh, I want to play my Alloro deck." It's like, well, I know exactly what it does. I know roughly what kind of experience I'm in for. I'd actually rather not.
Yeah.
And then we'll work that out.
Exactly. And sometimes it's someone's built like something super high powered and they're worried it's a little high powered, so they might ask you, "No, play Allura against this."
Yes.
Radadravic.
Yeah.
When Alex made Radadravic, I was like, I want to play Allura against that because this is uber high powered.
Yeah.
And
I think
be a lot of fun.
Yeah, to try and like, I don't know, begin to weave us towards some kind of conclusion. I think part of the problem is calling it rule 0.
Yes.
It is not a rule. Like the word rule implies something firm that you must adhere to. It's not actually reflective of, I think, what a good pre-game discussion is. Like, no one is sitting down and going through a checklist and saying, what does your deck do? What does your deck do? It wins on turn 3. Okay, that's too high power. No, next. For me, like it's a super casual thing of I'm going to sit down. Usually it's with people I know, so it is a bit easier, but I've done this with strangers who it basically, like, The lowest effort version of this for me is the first person to pull out a deck. I'm going to just be like, hey, what is that? What does it do? And I'm going to let them tell me whatever they want to tell me. And then if I want to ask more questions, I will. Otherwise, I'll just pull out a deck that I think will kind of create a fun game experience with that. If the third and fourth person pull out a deck that I think like maybe doesn't gel super well, then maybe we have a longer conversation. But like it's at most to get things going, one or two questions.
Yeah, and I think one of the things as well is if someone's bringing out Indominus Rex Alpha, Muldrotha of the Gravetide,
Still you.
yeah, but if someone's bringing out Carador,
Yeah.
still me.
Yeah.
But if
Just
someone's
great,
bringing
just
out a
graveyard
graveyard
shit.
deck and your brain goes straight to, which ones have Leyline of the Void?
Yeah, graveyard hate.
Which one has Graveyard Hate? Then what experience are you looking for in that game? Like, it's something to think in yourself of like, well, they're playing Graveyard, so I'm going to play my Graveyard Hate deck.
But then what you should do, because that's valid,
It is valid.
but you should say to that person, oh, I want to play this as well, like while you do that, is that okay?
Yeah.
Because like you are essentially saying, I'm going to play a deck that fully is going against your entire strategy.
Yeah.
And that has to be something that they're okay with because there's two other people as well.
Exactly. It's like this deck's going to shut your deck down in a one-on-one.
Yeah.
And then, we do have, again, two other people. So they might play someone that is full of counter spells, full of reaction. So I might try to shut your deck down, but they can counter me.
Yeah.
There's politics in the game. It's a 4-player format where everyone has priority.
Yes. And I think to go back to the idea of like Rule Zero is a bad name. Commander, and it's like something I've only started thinking about in response to us looking at all of this stuff. To me, it's like you've got everything else, including CEDH, which is competitive essentially, which is like 1v1 or CEDH 1v1v1v1, where everybody is going in knowing that everybody else involved in that game is there intending to win.
Yes.
And like, yes, we go into Casual Commander knowing that someone has to win, and sometimes, like, I'll put win cons in my deck, don't get me wrong. I've got ways that I know my deck can win a game, but I'm ultimately there to have a good time, because in a competitive environment, the rules are set up and the structure of tournaments is set up because your reward is having an opponent to play. Your reward is competition, whereas in Commander, the reward is just getting to play another game.
Yeah.
More play is the reward. And so you should be trying to make the play good and enjoyable, because that's all you get.
And you don't want to be there for several hours unless you want to be there for several hours.
That's a choice.
So it's like, the game does have to end
Yes.
at some point. And if someone keeps playing Cyclonic Rifts to stall the game and slow it down, that is their prerogative.
That is.
And that's something to talk to them about after the game.
Yes.
Or something to think about the next time you play them. You're not going to target them because they're having the Cyclonic Rifts. You're going to say to them, hey man, that last game went for 5 hours because you kept
board wiping,
wrathing, rifting, and somehow found a way to recur them. Can't be Magar because that's Rakdos. But like,
you're just reusing the same spells over and over.
Exactly. Oh,
but yeah,
Balloona.
I think like so you've got like competitive, right? Which is, you want to win.
I want to win. I don't care what you guys do.
Yeah. What I look at Casual Commander as is a cooperative game experience. The four of us are coming together to try and do something together that is fun. In my mind, it's actually, I think, more akin to something like D&D, where you're coming together to collaboratively tell a story, and you're not supposed to be in direct conflict with each other. You're supposed to be working towards a shared goal. D&D fails at this sometimes, and there's better RPG systems that do a better job of that, or different RPG systems that do a better job of that, I should say. But in D&D, you have something called Session Zero, which is, again, an optional thing, largely community-driven, but it's a thing that a lot of DMs will do where they get the entire playgroup down. Like, you've probably done some or all of your character creation, and it's more a chance to sit down and go through, like, what is the campaign we're going to be running together as a group? What is the story it's going to tell? Are there any stories or topics that any of you find personally uncomfortable that you don't want to approach with agency? Because you are playing a character, you are acting out what would my character do in these scenarios. There might be, like, there are like official Wizards produced games that have like some pretty gruesome shit in them.
Curse of Strahd.
Yeah,
Straight from the top of the head has
yeah,
some
yeah,
really dark things in them
yeah.
that would make any kind of topic be an important discussion of sensitivity.
Yeah, yeah, it's a sensitivity discussion, and that is kind of what session 0 in D&D is for, is to go around the group and say like, where are my limits personally, making sure everyone else is aware of them, so that no one intentionally or unintentionally approaches or passes a line that would make people uncomfortable, right? And that's about protecting that shared game experience, and that, to me at least, is what Commander is at its best,
Yes.
where all 4 people are working towards that goal, which is largely reflected in the philosophy of Commander and sort of what they envision the game as being. To go back to like some of our previous discussions, it might sound like we're saying this has more value than this in terms of like what you the way you approach the game. It's we're not trying to say that. I think the point here is every version of Commander that your playgroup wants to have is valid. The thing that is important to do is talk about it beforehand and make sure that everybody's on the same page, that no expectations are like out of whack, so that someone spends an hour and a half in a game and at the end realizes, oh, that actually made me really frustrated because this person was doing this strategy and it worked against everything I was trying to do.
And I guess with a successful game of Commander leading to more games of Commander, whether that's tonight, whether it's next week, whether it's next month, like doesn't matter when the next game is. The successful Commander game leads to more games of Commander, whether you play that deck again or it didn't work and you adjust. And the format's getting bigger. The game's getting bigger, and the format gets supported more the more people play it. You know, and look at the Australian like creator community and how much bigger it's getting, and how people who were originally doing other things are now latching onto Magic because it's so fun and it's so accessible, and the people that are introducing them to the games, there are some people that are making shows now where I was in their first Magic game.
Yeah.
And it's like the way we have communication around the game and the way we make the game playable shouldn't just be for someone's first time.
No.
It's a conversation we are always having, and it's an unfortunate cop out to say that every conversation we have is a Rule Zero conversation, which is why I think the name needs to change.
Yeah, because I think too, like we also have like less common, but we do this within like our sort of group of friends, is like sometimes a post game discussion of like talking through specific plays that happened, of like yeah, if it was like I'm playing graveyard deck and someone was repeatedly like destroying my graveyard, like that's probably something I'd want to talk about after, of like why did you feel the need to go after me so hard? Like it felt out of balance with the rest of kind of the way the game was developing. Like if someone feels unfairly targeted, that's feedback to give the person who was targeting them, so that they know that it might have been unintentional, but if you don't mention it, there's no chance for them to like learn from that experience.
Exactly, and we're not saying every game you need to have a brief and a debrief.
No.
But every game you should be having a healthy conversation in a casual format.
Yeah.
Where you should be able to have healthy conversations.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't have a healthy conversation with your play group, they're either not your friends or they're strangers you don't want to talk to.
Yeah.
Because I've been to
I have walked away from many games and players because of shit like this.
Exactly. There are tables I'll go to where I'm like, I've played a game with that person, and I'm not in the mood to play with them.
Yeah.
Because of previous conversations I've had with them. And
Yeah.
I'm not banning that person. The rules committee isn't saying, oh, this person can't play Commander anymore. It's just my decision not to play with them.
I'm making choices to protect my, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but
Fun.
it's like, it takes a lot of, you put a lot of time into a game of Commander, and I want it to reward me in some way. And if I have past experiences with individual players, or it's usually just individual players, if I'm being honest, like I don't really judge decks or commanders. But yeah, like if I have enough evidence in my own experience to go like, I don't think I have a good chance of a good time here, I just won't do that. Like I could just go put my time somewhere else.
But also very much how you communicate that as well. You can't be just like,
I don't
Oh,
want to
you're
play with
playing
you.
that? What the fuck? It's like, you know, you don't always have to justify yourself. You don't, you know, always owe people that. But it's respectful to say, oh, look, I don't want to play against that because I don't have anything that can, you know, I don't have anything that can react in a way that will be reactive or allow me to have fun.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else you can play? If you don't, oh well.
Yeah.
And I guess also identifying within yourself of like, if you've had a bad rule zero conversation, because that's what it's called for now, so that's what I'm going to call it. It's, you know, stopping yourself and saying, oh, look, you know, I probably could have spoken about that better. Or if you think someone has misled you, saying, look, I don't think you were honest about this.
Yeah.
Like, your deck did this very aggressively. And, you know, it could be just a case where, like, they didn't know it worked that way. It happens.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
My Aloro deck, I thought only had one infinite combo. And then someone removed it from the board, and I'm like, damn, there goes my combo. I guess I'll have to win this another way. Put down literally my next card, and I'm like, oh no, they say the same thing.
It's the same thing, yeah.
They say the same thing.
Yeah.
Sanguine Bond and Epicural Blood.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the one. Or Exquisite Blood and Epicural Blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, turns out, same card.
Yeah.
Just one's a creature, one's an enchantment.
Yeah.
So, like, sometimes you don't know, and you don't realize, and then you learn in the game, and you can talk about it after.
Yes.
But, and I think the best point is written down on the paper down there that says all versions are valid. Just talk.
Yeah.
Whatever way you want to play, just talk about it.
Get out of here.
Exactly. Get out of there. But just talk. Talk to
Yeah.
your friends. Talk to the strangers on the table that you're about to play with.
Yeah.
Because we also want to keep them in the community.
Yes.
Like, I want you to be playing Commander.
We also want to like work with the people around us to make them better, like better players, but better like members of the community, better stewards of the game. Like if they're going to go and bring people into the game themselves, if they're not approaching that like positively and collaboratively, they're just going to perpetuate bad habits.
And at that point, it's almost operant conditioning, where it's like, we went to an event. Are we okay naming places? You know, I'm gonna name a place. We went to the Outlaws of Thunder Junction opening event at Fortress.
Yeah.
Then we played with two guys, one who'd been playing Commander for about a month, one that'd been playing for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And both of them were pretty fresh. And we had this environment where I was here, new one was here. Chili was there, new one was there. So it was myself, new person, experienced player, new person. And that was the turn order. And we were not only just happy letting the new people, you know, have redos if they made a mistake, or giving advice about, you know, ways they could tap things, and if they forgot May effects and stuff like that. We also decided that we weren't going to give ourselves the same concession because we were the experienced players. And, you know, it was identifiable that to show, yeah, you get to fuck up because sometimes there's a lot going on in this game.
Yeah.
And
There's
you need
4
the
players
time to
boards
think
to deal
about
with,
it.
yeah.
And then me with my 1,024 Scoot Swarms on the board by the end.
Yeah, you did do that.
I won. I won after everyone had good board states, because everyone was still alive when I won.
Yes.
Like, no, it wasn't just like, oh, yeah, you're not sitting in the game anymore. It was like,
yeah,
oh, no,
yeah.
Gramps now has too many
Yeah.
Scoots. But then Chili would have his turn with no takebacks, going through his orders. And if he forgot something, he forgot something. Because you also have to be like, yeah, no, we fail sometimes. We fuck up and we forget. By the end, I don't think anyone was having any takebacks.
Yeah, like it was maybe a good like 3 or 4 turns of like a little bit awkward, a little bit janky, but then it kind of just smoothed out.
Yeah, and then when it got awkward again, because the game has that, it has ebbs and flows.
Well, especially when you're playing like precons for the first time blind. It's like you read a card, you're like, I think I know what this does, and you try to play it. It's like, it doesn't quite do that. Let's walk that back and try it again.
Especially when they're both is it precons.
Yeah, they were both playing the same deck. The funniest thing was when I stole both of their commanders and killed one of them to the legend rule.
So good.
Did it twice.
It was really good, and I tell you, that's what the legend rule is for unintentionally, I guess. But like, is hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's a hard precon.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where even that game is a greater community and a greater casual discussion, where it's like, we're playing a casual format with strangers.
Yeah.
I didn't know who these people were.
Yeah.
I still don't know who they are.
The thing is, like, we didn't really need a pre-game discussion,
Yeah.
which I think is what I'm going to try and call it now.
Yes. We had a dream game discussion.
We didn't need a pre-game discussion because we were all playing precons from the same set.
Yes.
You can basically assume they're balanced against each other. But what we had a lot of was in-game discussions, like you say, about like, oh, if you tap your land this way, you can save one for this card that I see you want to do, or that effect on that card that's on the battlefield, like that kind of stuff. And then they're like, oh, and then we'd follow that up with, no, just do that now so you can see how it works.
Yeah.
And then the next turn they would remember it, and kind of that's how you see them learning.
Yeah. And it's like, and something we have to do as experienced players, because we've spoken on and on about pre-game discussions, but I guess it's all about game discussions in general, pre, peri, and post.
Mm-hmm.
Or pre, ante, and post, depending on what kind of doctor you are. But like the peri game discussions are very much that. I just have Nando's in my head when I say that.
Yeah, peri game
Our
discussion.
peri bring discussions, brought to you by Nando's. This episode sponsored by Nando's.
No, you can't just say that.
Get your peri
Stop
discussion
it.
today.
Stop it.
But those discussions are about like, sometimes you have to talk people through it. Even experienced players, where it's like, I will very honestly speak about a game where it got into a bit of a shouting match because of the way state-based play work, where damage counters go onto a creature, and then a creature that buffs creatures leaves the battlefield, so every other creature gets debuffed, but the damage counters remain. So they didn't understand that with their attempt at a board wipe, they wiped their own board too.
Yeah.
Whereas what they thought it was going to be was, oh no, the board's not, like my board's fine, and I've won the game. Didn't happen that way. And it got to a bit of a shouting match. And, on reflection, and we've spoken about it, where, we didn't really need to get that way.
Yeah.
They could have been discussed better, but, when you're in the heat of the moment and something really exciting happens and it doesn't go your way, it does get that way. Yes. We have to acknowledge we're people.
Yes. Look, conflict resolution is hard. We both have degrees. We both talk a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I work in psychiatry.
Yeah. I have a psychology degree.
Exactly.
It's hard.
We maybe could have focused on that.
No, that's a whole different episode, I think. Like
Magic psychology.
Yeah, that's a very different episode.
But it's one of those things where you just got to talk through it eventually. And if you can't have the discussions, don't play with that person again.
Yeah, and this is the other thing with like Commander as a casual format. There is space for you to do that within a game. Like you're never on a time limit unless you want to be or you have to be because you've got like other commitments. Sometimes a 3-hour game's not what you've got time for. But you've always got time to like just say, hey, could we just talk through that so I make sure I understand it?
Yeah.
Like that can be how that gets resolved. Or it's like, hey, I don't appreciate the tone you're taking right now. Can we just take a moment and just unpack sort of what has happened so that we all understand and we can move forward with the game?
And it's all a learning experience. It's never a targeted attack. And if it is a targeted attack, that is not someone you want to play with.
No.
We always have to learn how to play the game better.
Yeah.
And how to do the game better.
Yeah.
I have another thought though. Is there anything you want to say about CDH?
I think so. The only thing with CEDH that I find interesting is like I started watching more CEDH content. Like I've been watching Spike Feeders and a couple of other channels just to like, because like I actually find it quite interesting, and also the videos are like 20 minutes long, so you can see a whole game play out very quickly.
Yeah, and we're gonna put a Spike Feeders meme on here because it was really fucking funny. It's the survival bias meme where it's like, oh, rule zero, it's problem.
Yeah, but CEDH content and casual commander content, as produced on YouTube and things like that, you never see their rule zero. You never see their pre-game discussion. The closest I think we've gotten recently is on the Command Zone podcast.
Yeah.
They put out a couple of really interesting episodes recently around like how they make game nights, how they produce it, what goes into deck building, their deck building philosophy, their in-house ban list. But their goals are very different because they're trying to create a very specific type of video product, because their audience is like, they're very conscious about their audience and how that might be someone's first exposure to Magic. So it's very heavy on explaining everything, not putting super complicated stuff in there, not making it seem like a really powerful, expensive format.
Yeah, you don't have to spend millions of dollars to get in.
Exactly.
Yes, they usually upgrade precons most of the time, or if they're building their own decks, like they are explaining like.
Yeah. So their pre-game discussion, what I took out of those episodes is that it's more about coaching people towards play styles that lend towards better video products at the end. It's less like they still have fun, and that is like largely part of their pre-game stuff is like make sure you're having fun, do the fun thing.
Yeah.
get your deck to do what it's supposed to
Don't go
do.
for the win, though the show has to end.
Yes.
But if there's something really silly there,
Yeah.
go ahead.
They kind of err towards what is going to be dynamic and fun and interesting.
What is going to be interactable?
Yes. And, CEDH content has the same problem. So I don't know, having never played CEDH, whether like pre-game discussions are a part of it. I would assume it's less so because it is a competitive format by nature. And the intent is I'm going in here to do everything to win.
Yeah, if I've learned anything from Twitter, pre-game conversations for CEDH is just throwing punches. It's like, no, fuck you, no, fuck you.
But the interesting thing about like how Spike Feeders in particular package their stuff is they do everybody introduces themselves and the deck they're playing, and they have like a nice little sidebar that kind of, they explain a couple of things about the deck's mechanics. But because it's a competitive format, there are meta decks and meta lists and meta packages of cards, and that is largely what they're referring to. It's known knowledge, it's assumed knowledge that people who play the format have.
Yeah.
They'll say like, oh, I'm playing this commander and it has this thing in it, and it's like, oh, cool. They've
I'm playing the first sliver and it has slivers in it.
Yeah, yeah. That is maybe selling your deck short, but like that is largely how it goes. Like when they talk about decks at Pro Tours and stuff, it's like, is it mid-range? And it's like basically everybody's playing the same version of that thing, so you know what they mean.
Abzan mid-range.
Yeah.
Tarmogoyf mid-range.
Yeah.
Hogak.
So yeah, like I don't know really how it fits in with CDH, but in terms of that like trusted versus untrusted play, I just think the goals are different. So I wouldn't be surprised if like pre-game discussions are just less of a consideration.
Yeah. And if it is becoming such a large problematic issue, the CEDH community is getting large enough where they could make their own ban list.
Yeah, or they could just like splinter some bit of the rules away and say like these parts of that base level EDH rules, like we're making these changes, because I think the reason it hasn't happened so far is like they don't want to have like too many divergent kind of things to keep track of, like that idea about like having to constantly monitor decks and keep them up to date and all that stuff. Like the commander rule set and philosophy is already like a pretty broad base to build anything on top of. Yeah, like you look at what is it? Canadian Highlander uses the vintage ban list.
Yes.
It's like when stickers and attractions got banned, like that obviously has implications onto Canadian Highlander, which is also an Eternal format.
Yep.
So there's a huge card list to work with there.
In the is that the 7-point Highlander?
I think
7-point Highlander is Australian Highlander.
I think they're different. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think Canadian, Australian, and 7-point are all different.
yeah, and then French, EDH.
We can't do this again.
Oui. Yeah, look, there's so many different formats of Commander that already exist and have their own rule things. And I think CEDH using the Commander list and then being a more competitive Commander format has its merits. Like, you know what, we sometimes rag on like, this is not a CEDH show, but like that is a valid format again.
But it's all about going into it with the correct expectations and communicating responsibly, I think is probably the word I'd put there. Like you should be, if you're in casual, you should be informing people fairly about what your deck does, because otherwise they're going to get like blindsided by some shit and have a bad time when that's just not the expectation people have about a commander game.
And I know someone that's taken cards out of a Commander deck because it's been too CEDH-y. So it's been like, oh yeah, this deck goes too hard too fast. It's not fun for anyone to play against it.
Yeah.
And like it actually is kind of boring for me to play. So
yeah, I think in episode 0 we talked about like my monocolor deck building challenge I gave myself. My mono black idea originally was Rankle Master of Pranks mass discard, and it was actually one of those Command Zone episodes I was listening to, and they talked about like briefly the idea of mass discard as like a deck archetype, and just how that is like actually a pretty toxic choice, because the entire function is to remove options from people.
Yeah.
And like, I had a full deck list ready to go. I was like, yeah, this will do stuff. Like I'm also discarding, but I will get value out of doing that. And I deleted it. And
I did the same with both my Demir Mill decks.
Yeah.
And my my Rakdos Captive Kingpin.
Yeah.
Because my Demir Mill deck was fully built in paper.
Yeah.
Like it was ready to go. And I kind of sat down and I, did some test hands, and I'm like, this isn't fun.
Yeah.
Like, no one's gonna want to. No one's gonna
Exactly.
want to play with this.
Yeah.
I don't want to play with this.
If I sat down and said like, oh, it's Rancor, I'm going to make everybody discard a lot,
Yeah.
they'd be like, why would I want to play against that?
Exactly. And same with like my Rakdos Captive Kingpin deck it was just so efficient at infinite comboing out that
Yeah.
I just didn't have like, you know, all of the Oloro infinite life gain, life loss combos existed, but then also just, you know, all will be one and the commander,
Yeah.
and it was just so efficiently working that
Have I told you what my new mono black list is? Saravok Deathbringer from Baldur's Gate,
yeah,
where it's a 3/3, and at the end of each at each end step, that player loses life equal to Saravok's power unless something left the battlefield that turn.
Yeah.
Like any permanent.
yeah,
And then because it says choose a background, Cultist of the Absolute, which says commander creatures you own get +3/+3, so it becomes a like 6/5, or whichever way it works. It has like ward, pay some amount of life,
War pay 3 life.
and at the beginning of your upkeep, sack a creature.
I did with Split the Party. An episode where we played Commander, where we made Battle for Baldur's Gate. There were 3 of us. We just like a little silly little Commander game, and Matt Brown, who is the runner of Split the Party, pulled that,
Yeah.
and it was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so basically what I'm trying to set up is like everybody is going to have to try and sack something or remove something from the board on their turn, otherwise they're going to lose some life, me included.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I've got maybe 3 things that will give me a guaranteed sack outlet per turn, but those are subject to removal.
Yeah.
Like I could still be hurting the same way. So it's,
I can feel pain.
yeah, so it's like it's a more symmetrical, very black kind of effect.
Exactly. And like even when you're deck building, think about the play experience. Think about the fun.
Yeah, like I'm currently going down the road of doing a Boros burn deck.
Yeah.
But it's like it's
Holy cow.
well it's Gazella Blade of Gold Knight, so it's like double for you, half for me. But also I can still fuck myself up because I'm putting in like damage doublers and stuff like that. And things like Descent into Avernus, because like this game's going to go quick, but we're all going to feel it.
Yeah, and I'm about to make a mono red burn deck because I'm a mono red player now, according to Arena. So, you know, it's just about play experiences and what we want to do with that.
Yeah, but like what I just told you about each of those decks is largely what I would sit down and tell a play group. It's like, this is the commander, the background, or whatever. This is mostly what the deck's going to do. This card or this card is what to look out for. Yeah, that's a starting point, right?
And there's a million things more we could say about this, but we have time restraints, and I need to go to bed at some point.
Yeah, I got to edit this. I don't want it to be longer than it needs to be.
So like, you know, and there's more stuff that we'll talk about, but I think the bulk of it is these people that are talking about Rule Zero, whether the game's outgrown it or the game needs it or people don't want to have it because they don't have social skills, is people screaming into an echo chamber about their opinion about it, but still not discussing it. Yeah. And that's their prerogative. They're welcome to do that, and I'm sure they have their discussions.
Dude, I had a whole big point I was going to make, and I've just remembered it.
Yeah?
So, you got time?
I got time.
Okay. So for 14 years, I played a sport called Ultimate Frisbee.
I remember this.
Yeah. So it is a fully self-officiated sport. There are no referees.
Yeah.
The way they do it in the US is different.
We ignore America.
Yeah. And that goes all the way up to world championship level. There are what they call game advisors, which are there as like a non-binding extra perspective, because the way the game works is if it's a non-contact sport, so if I hit you, incidentally or otherwise, you are allowed to call a foul yourself and it will stop the game. And the intent there is we will have a discussion about what happened, we'll reach an agreement, and whichever way that discussion goes, there are in the rules ways that it gets resolved. And if we can't if we can't reach a consensus within like 30, 45 seconds, that's where a game advisor can come in and say, here's what I saw. It's not binding, so you don't have to take what they say, but it's just an extra perspective on...
A suggestion.
Yeah, because like you're getting caught up in what happened to your body, you're not going to necessarily get it right. But the way that gets reinforced, because people hear about that and they go, well, how the fuck does that work at a competitive level? The way it gets reinforced, and it works way better than I ever thought it would, they have a system called Spirit of the Game. So after every single game, you rate the other team, your opponent, on 5 categories. I'm going to see if I can remember them because I stopped playing a few years ago. But it's like communication, fouls and body contact, fair-mindedness. There's two others, but it's basically like
Rule zero.
all pillars of did they approach the game fairly but competitively. Rules, knowledge, and use is one of the categories as well, because like you have to make the calls yourself. You have to know the rules,
Yeah.
so you have to be rules accredited. You have to do quizzes every year.
Damn.
But those ratings go to the tournament director, and if they start to see a bunch of bad ratings against one particular team in one or more categories, they will go and have a conversation with them and say like, "We've noticed this. You should probably have a discussion internally." Like it depends whether or not they submit notes with the thing to give them that kind of feedback. But a thing that started happening a few years ago was like actually encouraging representatives in the teams like to represent their team on behalf of Spirit, and like each team would have one of those people, and they would have check-ins throughout the game, which is your like
Spirit captains.
exactly what they're called. So you have a team captain and a spirit captain. But they would have a
So
discussion
good.
before the game,
Yeah.
a discussion at halftime,
Yeah.
and a discussion after.
Yeah.
And that is exactly this system.
Yeah.
Because what it actually ended up doing is it would correct bad behaviors in certain teams. It would, through social pressure, force bad actors out of the community.
Yeah.
Because teams would just not put them on their list,
Yeah.
or they would give them feedback and they would correct that. And it really, really works because everybody buys in and everybody does it.
There's a
And
rule
like,
set and everyone places the rules.
yeah, and if certain teams aren't, say, taking it seriously, then they will be spoken to eventually because people will notice. Like if people are putting in joke submissions, everybody always gets like maximum points. It's like, well, you're not taking it seriously.
Taking the piss.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, if you're playing Magic and you're playing Magic on any level, whether you know the rules fully or not, there's a certain comprehension that you have of the rules, or at least you've tertiarily learnt them, and you have that discussion beforehand. Like we spoke about the Fortress game, those two guys told us that they were very new.
Yeah.
So we were prepared for that.
And like that, they could have just said like, oh, this will become evident. I don't need to say it, but they still did because that's respectful.
Yeah. I think that's really wonderful to end on. So
Yeah.
I'm going to sum up that point that you had there from the way that I took it. Chili Bin, one of my closest friends, someone that I play a lot of Magic with, says that if you want to play Magic, you have to go through at least a level 2 rules judge course before you're allowed to play Magic, and there's no other way around that. Fuck you if you're not a judge.
What about the rules? The first one, like the rules advisor, before you do a level
No,
one
you have to be a
judge?
level 2 judge.
That's insane, dude.
Fuck rules advisors. I say as one of them. Anyway, if you like our content,
Yeah.
at
Get it right.
Compliance Show
On.
Twitter,
Yes.
and then Casual Compliance on literally everything else, because fuck you.
Elon.
I wanted to say Mark Wahlberg there, and I love you, Mark. Please don't be mad at me. I'm sorry.
Don't love Mark Wahlberg. He's kind of a bad guy.
I don't love you, Mark Wahlberg. Fuck you.
But it was like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Mark Wahlberg.
You heard what I said, Jesse Eisenberg.
It's Justin Timberlake doing that.
At Casual Compliance.
Yeah.
Twitter.
If you've got questions that you like to lean on for pre-game discussions, chuck them in the comments. I'd love to actually hear what works for people. I've got some go-tos myself, but always looking for more.
Thank you, Spider Wicked, for our first ever email where you've corrected one of our problems straight away.
Yeah, some weird technical issue where the wrong fucking show got uploaded.
A Destiny podcast uploaded to our Spotify. We read our emails.
Yeah.
We respond to your messages.
Yeah, I still don't know why that happened.
Hey, is what it is.
It's fine, I fixed it. Don't worry about it.
I listen to our podcast when I sleep, so it's probably weird hearing our friend's voice through my ears when I'm... So weird to say that I listen to our podcast sometimes when we sleep. Probably not. Anyway, don't think about it. Email me at it's casualcompliance@gmail.com.
Yeah.
My hand hurts.